a good majority of the influencers are lying, especially when they say, you could buy 4 businesses and go fishing. I saw that one time on Instagram and I almost fell out of my chair laughing. But it's also sort of scary because not enough people are really paying attention to how difficult it is to buy a business. I'd say the biggest question they need to ask over and over again is, why are they selling?
You're listening to Before You Buy or Sell a Business, hosted by Jared Johnson, the top SBA lender in the country. On this show, we break down business acquisitions, talk to industry pros, and provide real-world advice for buyers and sellers.
Welcome back to Before You Buy or Sell a Business. I'm Jared Johnson. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to have somebody interview me. We're going to talk about, just kind of some of the basic questions that I typically get from buyers and sometimes even from sellers. We're going to walk through kind of what's going on now with entrepreneurship through acquisition and hopefully answer a lot of the questions that the listeners have. It's no secret that ETA has blown up in the last couple of years. It's gotten very popular. It's also become very, very competitive, and there are a lot of buyers out there looking for deals. I'm hearing even more recently that there's less and less sellers. I've had a lot of business brokers tell me that lately they're having a hard time getting listings. So you really need to figure out how to set yourself apart if you're in the process of looking for a business. I'm hoping I can answer some of those questions today. Always excited to spend time with this interviewer and this person that's coming on to ask the questions. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead and bring on the interviewer today. It's been a little while since we've heard anything from her, but I'm really happy today to be interviewed by the one and only Piper Johnson. Hey, Piper, how are you?
Doing well.
Thanks for coming and doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, no problem. Okay, you ready to ask me some of the questions that were asked to you that people sent in?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, go ahead and ask me the first one.
The first question comes to us from Mr. Alan Peterson, and he asks, is ETA really something that could work as someone's career, or are the influencers lying to us?
That's a great question, and I would expect nothing less than honesty from Alan Peterson, who's probably the funniest guy that we know, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll get into it. So basically he's asking, is ETA real? Can somebody actually do it? Is it something that someone could choose as a career path? Or are the influencers just lying to us because they want us to buy their courses and spend money on them? I would say, first of all, ETA has grown drastically in the last 4 or 5 years. 15 years ago, the type of stuff we were working on was not really what we'd consider ETA or entrepreneurship through acquisition. It was more just somebody buying a business, which in a way, it's sort of still that way, but now we're starting to see things look a little differently. We're starting to see people kind of go to school and think about this long-term as a career path, where historically it may be something that they fell into, or somebody may have been running a company and then just decided that they could go through and buy the business that they work for, or maybe the competing business down the street. Whereas now it's turned into an entire career path where people are heavily focused on learning how to buy a business, how to do it the right way. And a lot of them have worked in other industries, or maybe even worked in the same, worked their way up at a company, and now are deciding to go do this on their own and buy a business themselves. So, there are people that are good for, people that are not. I would say that a good majority of the influencers are lying, especially when they say, they're not able to really sit there and say, you could buy 4 businesses and go fishing. I saw that one time on Instagram and I almost fell out of my chair laughing. But it's also sort of scary because not enough people are really paying attention to how difficult it is to buy a business. And not only just buy a business, but then, of course, operate the business. You can never buy a business and just go fishing with your kids. If so, I wish we could do that. We'd probably ride horses, but, maybe your brother would like to go fishing every day. So,
Yeah.
I would say I do think it is legitimate, but the way that the influencers are positioning it to us, it's probably not legitimate the way that they're doing it.
So who's actually a good fit for this?
So who's actually a good fit? That's a great question. I would say, people that have already worked, right? So probably the ideal person would maybe go to college and, you know, get out of their undergrad, go work something, maybe consulting, private equity, investment banking, or work their way up through a company. So they're actually managing people, learning skills, learning how to save money. They're accumulating money and they're gaining skills and building a network. Once they do that, they should focus on trying to find a business in the same industry that they have some skills in, or where their management experience can easily translate to the business that they're buying. I would say they would be somebody that would be, a really good fit.
So the influencers are lying when they say it is easy to buy a business with no money down?
Yeah, for the most part. The SBA does require 10% for a down payment, and the seller can carry half of that required down payment, but they would need to put it on what we call standby, which would mean there's no payments due for the entire time that they have the SBA loan. So typically for 10 years. So if the seller is willing to not collect any payments for the first usually 10 years, then you could use that towards half of the required down payment. So the buyer would still need to come in with at least 5% down. And it's really important to remember that it's 10% or 5% in that case of the entire project amount. So it's not just the purchase price of the business. We're going to take the purchase price, we're going to include working capital, usually any closing costs, any costs that maybe they incur for their due diligence and working on the business, and then their down payment requirement would come from that. Hopefully that answers your question, and hopefully Alan will like the answer. He's a
Mm-hmm.
tough one to please every now and then, but he should be happy with it. So
The next question is from Jaden Largent. They want to know, since you're such a good SBA lender, can you tell us what the bank is looking for in a good deal?
all right. Well, I'm surprised that Jaden asked you that question, but you know, I'm sure she'll definitely like the answer. So, what is, something that, the bank is looking for in a deal, basically? What's a good deal? That could be a very long answer. Typically, some of the stuff that we're looking for is somebody with good experience, somebody that has money saved, they have a good amount of liquidity that they can save and that they can put towards the deal, and then can also still have on reserves after they take over the business. The other things that we'd be looking for, of course, is a good business. So we want to see a business that is creating enough cash flow to repay our loan. And we also want to see that it's fairly consistent. We don't want to see that the sales revenue is going up and down and up and down, or what we see a lot that is very common is it just suddenly came up in the last, year and a half, and they're looking to sell the business. So that's something that, would make it a little bit tougher. It doesn't mean it can't be done, but a lot of times what we're looking for is very consistent numbers from that seller. And then, of course, again, buyer with experience, some cash flow. They also want to see that the business has good management in place. If not, how is the buyer going to work in the business and add some management strength to it themselves? Outside of that, we want a buyer that has good credit. Somebody that has shown that they can handle something like buying a business, and then they're able to take it on from there and be successful with it.
What are some common red flags that kill deals early?
Oh, good question. I would say the biggest one is usually that the cash flow doesn't work on a business. It's pretty common that I get a business from a buyer. Maybe they're just looking at it to see if it's something that will work. The numbers that the business broker are showing and the numbers that are actually on the tax returns or within the financials, if they do a quality of earnings, are very different. And most of the time, the numbers that we're seeing when we're trying to determine if it can repay the debt are much lower on the actual tax returns than what the broker is providing. So that's something that could absolutely kill a deal quickly. Outside of that, we're seeing buyers that don't have much cash. We're also seeing some that don't really have any experience. Also seeing some that don't want to operate the business directly. They want to do it remotely, or they want to show up once a week. I'm sorry, once a month for a week and operate the business that way. And that's usually going to kill the deal. From there, some other things on the seller side, you may see that a good majority of their revenue is coming from one or two customers. And if those customers left, they'd really be in big trouble. So with the concentrations like that, it'd be something that, we would end up not being too comfortable with. But those are some of the main red flags that we're seeing that are killing deals early.
Why do some good deals still not close?
Yeah, I'd say there are some that maybe it's just not the right fit for that buyer. The buyer may have a really good business that they're under contract with, they're trying to buy. And as they work through the business, they may decide that it just doesn't line up with their skill set or their experience. And they don't feel comfortable, ending up closing and buying the business. I also see many times where the buyer and seller just don't get along. They may see differently on how to operate the business or what they want to do in the future, and they end up getting in an argument or a fight and aren't able to end up closing on that deal. So it can become, a pretty big problem down the road.
The next question is from Rocker Steiner, and he asks, how do lenders evaluate buyers?
Well, first of all, I can't believe Rocker Steiner asked you a question. I figured he'd be really busy riding some bareback horses or something, who knows. But
Yeah.
thanks, Rocker, for asking the question. I appreciate it. So, how to, lenders evaluate buyers? So, first thing, and I feel like we've covered a little bit of this, but we'll kind of run through it quickly. Um, Usually, the biggest thing we're going to look at is their financial strength. So, I'm going to look at their personal financial statement. I'm going to see how much cash do they have towards the down payment. Do they, at a minimum, have enough for the 10% down? But in reality, we'd like to see that they have a lot more than just the 10% for the down payment. There's a lot of things that come up during the process that are expensive. And then as soon as you buy the business, you usually have a lot more expenses than you would assume. And so when they take over the business, we want to see that they've got cash that they can hang on to and that they can use during that process. So we're really looking for them to have some good amount of liquidity. From there, the next thing we're going to look at is really their experience. Are they positioned to buy this business from an experience standpoint? Do they have what it takes to operate this specific business? And one thing that a lot of people don't spend time doing is sort of writing down their skills and their experience over the years and what exactly they've done in their prior careers before wanting to buy this business, and then comparing it directly to the business that they want to buy. When people do that, many times they can find that their experience actually does correlate directly to the business they're buying. So we'd like to see at a minimum that they've managed people. If they have financial experience, even better. But of course, if they've worked in that specific industry that they're looking to buy, that's probably the best case of what we'd like to see. And of course, if they've managed or owned and operated a business in that same industry. From there, we're also going to look at, will they have any other income? So are they keeping a job? Do they already own a business? Do they have investment properties that are giving them income? Maybe they have a spouse that's willing to guarantee the loan with them and they have income. That's great. Those are some great situations that we like to see. So we want to make sure that they've got uh, possibly another source of income. If not, then we're looking at, how much do they need in order to pay their bills, cover their expenses, all that good stuff. If they don't have another source of income, we're going to take an expense from the business they're buying and pull out that salary for them and then make sure that the business still looks like it won't have any problems paying back the loan. Outside of that, I'm really kind of looking at their character and some of what we're looking for as well as how are they managing kind of their personal expenses. Are they making a decent amount of money but able to save it as well? Or are they, spending every dollar they have? They're struggling to save money. And normally we're seeing a direct correlation to them taking over the business and they're going to operate the business in the same manner. So if they've been good at saving money, they've been good at not wasting money on things they don't need to buy, they're most likely going to do that in the business as well. So hopefully that answers some of your question. And of course, every buyer is going to be a little bit different. And then every business they're buying is also going to impact how we look at that specific buyer.
Can buyers do things to make themselves look better?
Yeah, definitely. Besides getting their haircut and, you know, brushing their teeth, like I tell you to do every single night. Of course, outside of that, I mean, yeah, they can always, spend some good time kind of paying attention to their actual financial situation. A lot of people will come to me when they're deciding that they want to buy a business. We'll take a look at their financial situation and see if, maybe they need to work a little bit longer, save some more money. They need to pay down some debt. They need to sell, something that will help pay off some expenses or some debts. So there are definitely things they can do, but in reality, what they really need to try to focus on is getting their experience to match up with what they want to buy and then putting themselves in a really good spot financially.
Yeah. We have another question, and it comes from Maverick Johnson. What's a perfect deal look like?
Oh, Maverick, of course you'd want to know what a perfect deal looks like. Oh man, so a perfect deal in my eyes would be that we have a buyer with good experience in that same industry. They're going to operate the business. They're going to be there every day. They're either already living in that area or they're going to move to that area. The business has some good management already included. Maybe they've got somebody that's doing marketing or managing some of the employees. And then they are going to either have a lot of cash on reserve after the down payment, or they're bringing in investors, and those investors will provide cash towards the down payment and hopefully go above and beyond that and have a lot of cash saved that they can use to operate the business as working capital, but then also grow the business. I really would like to see that they've got more money put in than kind of just the 10% that's needed. And of course, if they can have a seller carry some of that financing on a seller carry note with good terms, maybe it's forgivable if they don't meet certain terms or don't have certain revenue. So if you put all of those things together, that's usually a good deal. And then, of course, it's a good business with good trends, good consistency, a good customer base, and a really high debt service coverage ratio.
So you like investors?
I would say most of the time, yes. We've had some good ones on the show. They're always ones that we recommend. They can reach out to. There's other ones we work with as well. Normally, what I'm looking for when there's a deal that has investors is, of course, that it meets the SBA guidelines. There's some very specific rules when it comes to that. But also, I want to see that they're actually going to help. They're going to be invested in just not just the deal, but the actual individual that's buying the business as well. It makes it a lot easier for us when we can rely on them to sort of help, whether that's add experience, take on some of the portions of the business, like maybe the accounting and HR, some of that, and then also they usually are working with us, kind of letting us know how the business is doing, and if there's something that they need to do to kind of jump in and help out. So most of the time, it's great when people work with investors, but I have seen some bad investors as well that are really sort of taking advantage of that buyer. And there are times really where the buyer doesn't need investors. But for the most part, we do like to see them.
The next question was asked by the next question was asked by Austin Porter. What are most common mistakes buyers make?
Oh, good question. And it's always great to hear from Austin as well. So, oh my gosh, the most common mistakes, I would say probably the most common mistake is buying the business and not doing any due diligence. So they're not investigating whether or not the numbers are accurate. They're not hiring someone to help with the quality of earnings. They're not having good legal. Somebody as an attorney that actually does acquisition and works on these types of transactions, please, please, please do not hire a family law attorney or your buddy down the street that just does, real estate law or something like that. It needs to be somebody that this is their career and this is what they focus on. And outside of that, just not asking the seller enough good questions on the front end. I'd say the biggest question they need to ask over and over again is, why are they selling? If they say they're going to retire, then ask them why they're retiring. What are they going to do in retirement? continue to ask them about that retirement. A lot of times, if they're not telling the truth, you'll catch them later on, where you may say something to them like, what are you going to do in retirement? Oh, I'm planning to go fishing. Oh, great. What type of fishing? Fly fishing. Oh, cool. And then next time you talk to them a week later, so what kind of fly fishing pole do you use? And if they can't answer you quickly and they kind of look at you funny, they're probably not telling the truth. And then you need to figure out, do I trust this person? Is there a reason that they're lying to me and saying they're retiring when they're actually really not? It can send off a lot of red flags, but kind of some of the normal stuff that buyers just are making just normal mistakes. And then from there, it's just not having enough cash, not trusting people. You see a lot of buyers as well that just search and search and search for a business for a really long time, and they finally find one, and it's probably not the right deal for them, but they feel like they've been looking for so long that they better just buy that business because otherwise they don't know when another one's going to come along. So it's not the right place to be. If either way, if you find it right away or you find it 2 years later, you still treat it the same, still go through the normal process, find good people like me and some of the investors we work with, some of the good attorneys we work with, have them evaluate the business with you and make sure it's people that you trust and someone you can really listen to.
Isn't due diligence expensive like my horse?
Well, yes, your horse is very expensive, and due diligence can be, but I'll tell you something that's a lot more expensive. Buying a business and it fails. That's a
Ooh.
lot more expensive, right? Be like you
Yeah.
buying a horse and not having a veterinarian check it out before you bought it, right? You may look at it and say, that's a great horse, or that horse comes from a great bloodline. I should just buy it. And you buy it, bring it home, and it only has three legs. What would you do, right? I mean, we could call it tripod, but you couldn't even ride it. So that's sort of the same thing, right? You buy a business, you need to dig into it. It may be in a great industry. The owner that's retiring, may be somebody that was popular in that industry. Maybe in a city where you already live and you're excited about it. The business broker may be a famous influencer business broker. You may think it's a great deal, but that doesn't mean you just go in and buy it. You still need to do the due diligence. You still need to dig into it. You need to have professionals work with you to look through the numbers, have good attorneys, spend time really evaluating the business and making sure you understand it before you buy it, just like your horse.
The next question is from Brittany Posey to Nosy. If someone decides they want to buy a business, what should they do first?
Well, I can't believe Brittany, reached out to you. She'd be
I
thinking she's a
convinced her
little
to.
busy, yeah, running barrels. But so if somebody decides that they want to buy a business, what's the first thing that they should do? I would say get in touch with other people that have done it and that have been successful. Talk to them, ask them questions. From there, find a lender that you really trust. If you're going to need financing, reach out to them. A good lender should be able to sit there and spend time with you, talk to you about the whole process. And the other thing you really need to do is find people that are going to be authentic. They're going to tell you the truth. They're not going to be somebody that says, oh, it's so easy. You just buy a business. Everything's going to be great. It's really easy and you have no trouble finding it and so on and so forth. Find people that are going to be authentic. They're going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you things that can go wrong. Really what it comes down to is the people they should be speaking with are people that have really good experience, and then spend the time with them, listen to them, and trust them before you decide if this is even really something you want to do. But those are some of the first things you should do.
What happened when you bought your first company?
Oh wow, okay, so that was a tough thing. So bought a business with a couple other people. It was a large manufacturing company. They actually had gone through bankruptcy.
Oh.
So the guys and I bought it from the bankruptcy court. And probably the worst thing that happened right away was they told us that the product that they were building had basically been completed, but they hadn't collected the money from the customers yet. So we would take over the business, we'd go right in there, and we'd be able to collect the money from the customers, which would really help us start off on the right foot and be very successful. Well, that was completely false. We didn't have the ability to actually go investigate all of that and do our due diligence because it was coming from the bankruptcy courts. So when we got into the business and we took it over, we found out that the old owner actually lied to all the customers and said that their product was done and collected all the money from them. And then when we went and talked to them and said, no, actually, you owe us money, they said, nope, here you go. We already paid. So the group that bought it, we had to put in $700,000 just to finish all the products so we could deliver them to the customers that had already paid the other guy for them. So it was a big lesson. It was really difficult. Ended up being successful. We were able to turn it around. Spent a lot of time running the business, developing new products, turning it around, getting the staff on board. There was many things that I learned in that business before I was able to successfully sell my ownership and move on to something else. But there was a lot of lessons in that, and that was just one of the things that can definitely happen to you when you take over a business.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on today and asking me a couple questions. It was good to see you again. I'm sure the listeners are going to be really excited to hear from you because it's been a while since we
It
did any
has.
videos. Yeah, you've been really busy riding horses and stuff. So,
And winning classes.
oh, well, that's great. I'm glad that you've been winning. You know, we're
Actually, only
Johnsons, so we like to win
once.
things.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, okay, do you have any pieces of advice yourself for somebody that's maybe looking to buy a business? What would you tell them?
Don't buy something just to buy something.
That's good. Yeah. So make sure it's something
Like a
that,
horse.
yeah, like a horse, right? Don't just buy a horse because you need one. So basically, what you're saying is make sure it's really a business that you'll end up loving to
Mhm.
operate, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. I hope
You're
you have a
welcome.
great day and you work hard riding your horses. We'll have to have you on again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If there are other questions that I can answer, please feel free to reach out to me. Send me an email, check out my website. There'll be some information on that at the end. Another thing, if you haven't heard yet, we're doing a community group for ETA in Fort Worth. So if you are in the DFW or Texas, or if you want to fly in, come on in. It's called Acquire Fort Worth. Basically, what we're doing is getting together once a month. We're partnering with a community college in Tarrant County, and we're focused on getting people together that are looking to buy businesses. So our hope is that we'll get people together to either discover acquiring a business, or maybe they're already in the process of looking, or they may have recently acquired a business. So our hope is to get those people together, have some great conversations, and continue to hone the craft and get better and better at buying businesses. On top of that, there may be some opportunities that come up for those that are looking in the area. A lot of times we'll have business brokers, attorneys, or other business owners that come through that are excited to bring businesses to the market. So hopefully we'll be able to have some deals come together. And at the end of the day, we're just really trying to get people together that are like-minded, that want to spend time together. So come check it out. It's Acquire Fort Worth. You can find it on my website. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. We'll be updating those events as they come together. So hopefully we'll see you soon there. And again, thank you for stopping by. I hope that this has been fruitful for you, and I wish you all the luck as you look for a business in the future.
Thank you all for listening to Before You Buy or Sell a Business. If you found value in this episode, please follow the show, leave a positive review, and share it with someone. For more information, check out jaredwjohnson.com. We'll see you all next time.